So in this video, I'm just going to go through the different things on the calculator that you might want or need to use with Chapter 8. All right, so this is just a reminder of how to get those critical values. So if they ask you for a critical value, you have to determine whether it's Z or T. Okay, just a reminder that Z is going to be for our confidence intervals for proportions, and then those sample size formula for both proportions and means. All of those use the normal distribution, so they would be a Z critical value. If you're doing a confidence interval for a mean, that is when we're using the T critical value. All right. Something that was not done in a previous video was a way to draw a box plot on your calculator when we have to check for normality. So if I'm doing a t interval for a mean and my sample size is less than 30, then I need to check if my sample is normal. So this would be my procedure. So we're gonna go through this as an example. So we have Michael Jordan's points scored in 15 randomly selected home games. All right, and so because our sample size is only 15, we need to draw a box plot here so that we can check if our sample is normal. Okay, so on a TI, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to stat and edit, and we're going to type in that data. So I've already done that. If you're working along with me, I would pause here and type in your numbers. Okay, then we need to turn on the stat plot. So that is here. So I'm going to hit second y equals. All right, and I'm just going to go to the first one. I want to turn that on. So I'm going to make sure my blinker is over on and press enter. And then the one that I want to choose is I want this box plot, but I want the one that has the outliers there. Okay, I want the calculator to tell me if there are any outliers that I need to know about. Okay, we're going to leave this as L1. That's where I typed my numbers. We're going to leave this as 1. The mark really doesn't matter. It's just if there are outliers, how do you want to show them to show up? So you can leave that how it is. Then to actually see it, what we're going to do is go to zoom. And you have two choices. You can either scroll down or you can just hit the number, but it is zoom stat. All right, we want the calculator to show us the stat plot. So if I hit 9, there is my box plot. Okay, and I can see what the actual numbers are if I hit trace. So it tells me the min's 24, Q1 is 27. I can go one by one and see what each of them are. Okay, we can do the same thing on a Casio. I'm going to go into menu and stat, and then I'm going to type those numbers in. I already have them typed in there. Okay, then we're going to choose graph. All right, so that's F1, and we're going to go to the settings to turn on the box plot. So I'm going to hit F6 for settings. Right now it's a scatter plot. I don't want that. So when I go down to the graph type, it gives me these three, and then the arrow for more options. So I'm going to go over because I want the box plot. Okay, list 1 is where my data is. The frequency is 1, and then we're going to turn outliers on. Okay, so I'm going to hit F1. That way, if there are any outliers, it will show it to me. Okay, then if I want to see that graph, I'm going to press exit, and we did that as graph 1, so I'm just going to hit graph 1. Okay, and so there's my box plot, and just like on the TI, we can see these individual numbers if we go to trace, so it's going to be shift F1. Okay, and then I can use my arrows to move along to see what each individual piece is. Okay, we talked about this in the 8.3 video, but you can't just make the graph on your calculator and call it a day. You have to actually sketch the graph on paper to get credit for that. All right, so what that would look like is we would do the process we just did, which is go through and sketch the box plot on the calculator. And then we're going to actually draw out this. So what I would do is I would use the trace function to look at the min and the max. So the min is 24 and the max is 38. So I know that my number line that I'm going to draw has to go from at least 24 to at least 38. Okay, so I'm going to draw a number line here. We can go ahead and start at 24 and let's count by twos because it's not a very big gap there. So 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, and 38. Okay, then I'm going to grab my calculator. Okay, and so I know that the min is 24, so I'm going to put a line at 24. All right, then I go over Q1 is at 27, so that would be like right there. The median is at 31, so that's going to be there. Go over again, Q3 is at 35, so that's going to be there. And then my max is at 38. I connect the 3 in the middle to make the box, and then I draw out to the whiskers. All right, so I would go through when I'm checking my conditions. This would be the third condition. All right, and then after I draw this graph, I'm going to write a sentence commenting on the lack of skew and outliers. So my sentence might look something like this. The box plot does not appear significantly skewed and it shows no outliers, so check that condition is met. You could say it's also like slightly skewed. Like this one's pretty symmetric, but if you had one that was a little bit skewed but not enough to prevent you from meeting the condition, then you could say the box plot appears slightly skewed but shows no outliers, so the condition is met. Okay, last thing I'm going to show you is your calculator will actually do confidence intervals for you rather than you having to use the formula. Even if you use the calculator to do the actual calculation for you, you still have to do the state part of SPDC, say what you're doing. You still have to check the conditions. So there's sort of like a pros and cons trade-off. It's going to be faster because the calculator is faster than a human, and there's less places for you to make like computation errors. But the cons are that you have to remember exactly where to go on the calculator and what buttons to push. You get a formula sheet on the AP exam, so the formulas are there for you. If you're going to use the calculator, you just have to know what to do. So it's kind of a personal choice, but if you're interested, keep watching, and I'm going to show you how to do the confidence intervals on the calculator. All right, so these are the steps. Okay, whether you have Casio or TI, the first one we're going to do is a confidence interval for a proportion. Okay, so here's the example we're going to look at. We're going to do a 90% confidence interval for the proportion of Katy Perry's Twitter followers who are female. Now, if you were doing this in a free response situation, whether it's a testing class or the AP exam, you would still do the S and P, the state and plan. So you would write out the 90% confidence interval, define the proportion that we're looking for, check all the conditions. Once you have done that, the do part, that's where we can break out the calculator. All right, so on the TI, I'm going to go to stat and go over to tests. And you got to scroll down a little bit, but we are doing a 1 proportion Z interval. Okay, that's the procedure that we're doing. Okay, when they ask for X, they asking for the number of sort of successes. So in this case, 308 of the people that he surveyed were female. So that's what's going to go in that X box. And then N is your sample size. So he had a sample of 500. Okay, and then C level is the confidence level, so 90%. So we're going to put it as a decimal 0.90. All right, press calculate. And then there is your confidence interval. So it would be 0.580 to 0.652. Could round to 2 decimal places. All right, same thing on the Casio. So we go to menu and stat. Let me exit out of this graph. Okay, this time interval is right here, INTR. That's what that stands for. So we're going to go to interval. We are doing a Z interval, and we're doing a 1 proportion, so 1P interval, okay? And then same thing here, we're typing in those numbers. So I'm doing a 90% confidence interval. My X is 308, my N is 500. Go to execute, all right, and it gives you, there's your left and right boundary, so 0.580 and 0.652. Okay, we can also do the same thing for a confidence interval for the mean. All right, so same type of thing, you do your SP, all of that is required no matter what, and then if you want to use the calculator for the do part, that is fine. All right, so we're back to our Michael Jordan data again. Now let's actually make a 95% confidence interval. All right, so in my TI, I'm going to go to stat, go over to tests, and we are doing a T interval. So that's number 8. All right, so a T interval. You can pick data or stats. So if the problem tells you the mean and standard deviation, then you would use stats and you would type in those numbers. But we actually have the data and we already have it typed in list 1. So I'm just going to pick data. All right, list 1, leave the frequency at 1, and we want a 95% confidence interval. All right, so my 95% confidence interval for Michael Jordan's mean number of points would be 28.204 to 32.863. Okay, we can get the same answer from the Casio, so I'm going to exit back out to the main menu. I want interval. This time we're doing a T interval, and it's a 1 sample. Okay, so same thing here. If we had numbers, if they gave us the mean and standard deviation, we would do variable, but we have the data typed in the list. And so we want a 95% confidence interval. Oops. All right, my data is in list 1, leave the frequency at 1, and then it gives you the interval again, 28.204 to 32.863. Okay, so if you want to use the calculator for the do part when you're doing SPDC for construct and interpret, I'm totally fine with it. Just be aware that like it's your responsibility to know what buttons to push. So if we're in a testing situation and you're like, can you tell me where I have to go? The answer is going to be no. All right, so you have the opportunity to use the formulas. You also have the chance to use a calculator. It's really up to you which method works best for you and your brain. All right, and that's it.